Well, hopefully you found that surprising and shocking to see how much movement you can see through the abdominal walls during that last part of pregnancy. And that's really because there's not much separating the developing fetus from the outside world during this period of pregnancy. All right, so I think we're going to have to get that baby out. So that's going to be accomplished through the process that we call labor. And, everybody likes to joke, it's called labor for a reason, and it's because it's hard. So it's long and painful. So let's get started. The first stage is the stage that where the cervix is dilating. So here we have a picture of a full-term baby. Mom's going to go into labor any minute, but she's not in labor yet. And what I want to draw your attention to is the opening of the cervix, which is right here at the top of the baby's head, right? You've got this little line here. This is probably a little bit misleading because, it's just a line. As pregnancy goes on, the cervix will soften and will open up a little bit. But when not in labor yet, the cervix is basically what we consider closed. During labor, it's going to go from closed. Here's a picture here on the left where the cervix is closed. It starts to open. This is like a 1 centimeter opening in the cervix. And then it's called fully effaced because you see how in the left-hand picture how thick the cervix is and how in the middle picture it's really thinned out. So now all that's left to happen is for it to open all the way up to 10 centimeters. So you start at what they call 0 and you end up at what they call 10 centimeters. So to illustrate what 10 centimeters looks like. So a Cheerio is 1 centimeter across. So you can use a Cheerio as your idea of what this cervix in this middle picture probably looks like. And then we go through a slice of a banana, which is 3 centimeters, a cracker, which is 6 centimeters, a soda can, which is 7, and then we've got a bagel, which they're saying is 10 centimeters. My problem with this particular chart is, bagels can vary in diameter, so I'm not exactly sure that the bagel you're eating and the bagel in this picture is the same. But the idea is you have, a pretty large opening that has to occur in order to let the baby's head pass through. The good news is the baby's head collapses. It's got a soft spot and the bones will overlap each other to get through the narrow opening of not just the cervix, but the vagina and, the bony structures of the pelvic region. So it's going to collapse down a lot, but that 10 centimeters is a lot larger than a lot of people expect would be possible, right? So to go from 0 centimeters to 10 centimeters of dilation means that the muscle that is the uterus has to pull that cervix open. And so if you think about any time that you've ever lifted weights and you're using your arms, and let's say maybe you've done body pump and you've just done a bunch of those, it's a lightweight, it's not that big of a deal, right? But by the time you've done that bicep curl for the 400th time in this song, your arm is screaming. It's the exact same kind of thing for cervical dilation, right? Where the uterus is like the bicep and it's pulling and it's holding and then it pulls and it holds and it pulls and it holds. And you get this buildup of lactic acid that starts to make it feel crampy and makes you feel tired. And so as the cervix is opening, it becomes more and more painful because you've been doing it longer and holding it longer. So by the time you're going from like 8 to 10 centimeters, it hurts way worse than it did when you were going from 0 to 2 centimeters. So the process is long and it is quite painful. The good news is that ultimately it's going to allow the fetus to pass through and ultimately exit, right? So I wanted to mention one more thing about that, 8 to 10 hertz more. That's called the transition period. The dilating from 0 to 8 is considered, so 0 to about 2 is considered early labor. And for a lot of women, they don't even feel the contractions associated with going from 0 to 2. Other women feel every single contraction from the moment they're going from 0 centimeters to 0.25 centimeters. Like they feel every single bit. So it really varies by woman. But those first 2 centimeters are a lot less painful. then what's going to happen between 2 and 8 centimeters? That starts to get serious, and we call that active labor. And that the period of active labor can last between 2 and 8 hours for a first-time mom. And then those last 2 centimeters, from 8 to 10 centimeters, that tends to be the quickest period, but it's the most intense and painful. And they call that the transition period. And this is the point when a lot of times women are like, that's it, I can't do this, I'm not going to do it. And it's a little too late now, but that's when they feel like giving up, because it's like, I can't do this anymore. But the good news is you're almost done, you're almost there, right? And then it's going to be finally time for stage 2, and that's going to be delivery of the baby. So all that's going to happen, of course, this is the most important thing, but it is the only thing that's going to happen, is delivery of the baby during this stage. Now, typically babies come out head first, and usually during the process of labor, they'll be face down, so that their soft face is what is, in proximity to mom's spine. Mean babies who don't love their mothers, I'm just joking. If you were a breech baby, I'm sure you didn't do it on purpose. But mean babies who don't love their mothers come out butt first, or in some other variation of breech. And this style of delivery is really super risky. And this is the kind of thing that, has been associated into time immemorial with moms not making it through childbirth. Luckily for modern moms, they usually will identify that the baby's breech early on in the labor, and they'll take precautions and do something else. So I don't want to scare anybody to death. If you want to take my lifespan development class, we go into a little bit more detail, because a lot of times nurses take those classes. I don't want to scare anybody to death, but there's, most babies come out head first. There's a subset of babies who come out either butt first or sideways, what's called transverse breech. And sometimes the doctor can turn the baby in time for them to actually come out head first, even though they wanted to be breech. But a lot of times when you have a breech baby, it's going to need to be delivered C-section. The big risk is that if you deliver the body first, the jaw might not be able to make it through the vaginal opening, through the bony structures of the pelvis, and the baby could get stuck. And you don't need a stuck baby. And the baby's head is designed to collapse down and push its way through the vagina. The jaw is not. And so they typically, if a baby is oriented breech and they can't get it to turn around head first, they're going to perform a C-section to get the baby out the other way. All right. Now, so the baby's out. We're done. Yay. No. One more thing has to come out, and that is that placenta that I've been talking about throughout pregnancy. It actually gets its own stage, because the afterbirth is such an important component of childbirth. Because the placenta weighs about 4.5 pounds at birth, it's not negligible, right? This is something that needs to obviously be cleared. We want to make sure that it comes out intact. Sometimes parts of the chorionic villi will still be embedded in the uterine lining, and will leave behind these clots that are not mom's DNA, right? Mom's uterus always makes clots when it's menstruating and stuff like that, but that's its own DNA. If you leave behind the placental DNA, that's baby DNA, and mom's body is going to attack it as an intruder, and an infection will develop, and that's really dangerous for mom. That's the other way that moms have historically died in childbirth, is that they've gotten postpartum infections. So it's really important to inspect the placenta, make sure that it's fully intact, make sure that mom's uterus is going to start returning back to normal. And so it gets its own little stage of delivery. Now, in modern times, there are lots of things that moms and dads, or moms by themselves, have to decide. They have lots of choices about how to deliver their baby. So, first question, who's going to deliver this baby? In modern American life, the most common answer is an OBGYN. That's a medical doctor who's an obstetrician. That's the OB, gynecologist, which is the GYN. And so their specialty is dealing with reproductive things, including delivering babies. So OBGYN is the most common person to deliver. Second most common would be a nurse midwife, which is a nurse who is an RN with specialty training in the delivery of babies and maternal health. So it's a specialty. Then there's what we call a midwife doula, which is not necessarily an RN. This is a person who's been trained in what's called midwifery and has not necessarily got a nursing degree. And so midwives are not necessarily always going to have that RN associated with them. And sometimes midwives are basically really what they mean as doulas, and doulas are terms that we use for birth coaches. So a midwife who's delivering a baby at home, who's not a nurse midwife, might be a midwife that's kind of also a birth coach. So there's different degrees of training, there's different degrees of knowledge, different access to being able to prescribe certain medications, things like that that can go on with that. So if you've decided who you want to deliver the baby, then the next question is where you want to deliver the baby, right? And if OBGYNs are our most common deliverers, it's not surprising to tell you that hospital is the most common place to deliver. OBGYNs almost exclusively deliver in hospitals. They usually deliver someplace where they have, practice rights at that hospital, whatever. And so hospitals are the most common place for delivery. 98.64% of U.S. births are in hospitals right now. So it's the most common place. So I think my internet's not working again, and that's why my videos aren't priming their pictures. But in this little piece, I wanted to share with you a kind of a jokey take on why there was kind of this push in the late 70s, early 80s to start getting a little bit more like natural about childbirth and less medical about childbirth. So I'll let you watch this video. It's queued up in the playlist, and I'll see you on the other side.